Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi says this is the year for the country to focus on its so-called New Northern Policy and build economic ties with countries to Korea's north. South Korea confirms its first case of a new pneumonia-like virus from China. A woman from the Chinese city of Wuhan was quarantined on Sunday at Seoul's main airport and tested positive. And President Moon Jae-in says the South Korean economy is bouncing back, driven by its key manufacturing exports. It's a trend he'll be aiming to maintain by cutting red tape and building new industries. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. Last year for South Korea's Moon Jae-in administration, it was the year to promote the new Southern policy. This year, the government's going to try and work on its new Northern policy, focusing on countries north of the Korean peninsula. Hong Yoo has this report.
Promoting the new Northern policy, the South Korean government will look to increase economic cooperation with countries located north of Seoul. During a meeting with economy-related ministers on Monday, Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said South Korea will bolster economic cooperation with northern countries to pull off accomplishments from the new Northern policy. To do so, South Korea and Russia will work together in 9 fields, such as railroads, electricity, and an Arctic shipping route. With Mongolia and other northern countries, it plans to establish a mid to long-term cooperation model and a bilateral and multilateral FTA belt. Hong also showed his willingness to help exports rebound following 13 straight months of negative growth. He said this year the government will try to conclude its agreement on the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership and bilateral FTAs with the Philippines and Russia by the end of this year. And he emphasized that export finance worth $207 billion will be supplied to help exports rebound. In terms of economic cooperation with China, South Korea will revitalize cultural and personal exchanges between the two countries. The two could cooperate in new service industries and foreign infrastructure to make a win-win result. Hong added that Seoul will use its strength as leverage in discussions to secure benefits from cooperation. And Seoul will also examine and prepare for inter-Korean economic cooperation, which could follow any progress between Pyongyang and Washington in denuclearization talks. Hong Yoo, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, changes are likely coming to North Korea's policy towards the outside world. It's bringing in as its new foreign minister an official known as a military hardliner. Some say the regime's hoping this will help it get a security guarantee out of the nuclear talks with the U.S. Lee Sung-jae has this report.
According to an informed source in Seoul on Sunday, North Korea has notified foreign ambassadors in Pyongyang of its recent decision to appoint a new foreign minister. The source says Lee Sung-kwon will be the regime's new top envoy after the notification was made a few days ago. This official appointment could come as quickly as this week. Lee Sung-kwon will replace Lee Young-ho, signaling that the North may reshape its policies towards Seoul and Washington.
The appointment of a military hardliner who has no diplomatic experience seems to be intended to open the door to dialogue with the U.S. and to launch for a frontal breakthrough on denuclearization after getting a security guarantee.
Lee was previously the head of the North Korean delegation to high-level talks with South Korea, including the meeting in August 2018, which ultimately led to President Moon Jae-in's summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in the North's capital the following month. However, besides his career dealing with the South, little has been known about his professional experience in the field of foreign affairs. His appointment also comes as Seoul has renewed its commitment to improving inter-Korean ties amid stalled nuclear talks between the U.S. and North Korea, and the widening difference between Seoul and Washington over their approach towards Pyongyang. Lee Sung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea has confirmed the first local case of the mysterious coronavirus from China. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says a 35-year-old Chinese woman who flew from Wuhan had a fever, respiratory problems, and other symptoms when she arrived at Incheon International Airport on Sunday. She was quarantined and tested positive for the virus. The KCDC has raised its infection alert level from attention to caution. China's reported more than 200 cases of the virus since it first appeared in Wuhan in late December, and at least 3 people have died. Experts say the virus belongs to the same family of coronavirus as SARS, but little is known about how easily it can be transmitted between humans. Teams in the Himalayas of Nepal have resumed their mission to find and rescue 4 missing South Korean climbers and 2 Nepali guides. They've been missing since an avalanche in the Annapurna region on Friday. The search was put on hold on Sunday because of heavy snowfall. Currently on site are some 30 local rescuers, helicopters, and an emergency team from South Korea. And among them is South Korea's top mountaineer, Hong-gil, who has climbed the Himalayas multiple times. The rescue team is going to use drones in their search, but they expect it to take at least 20 days due to heavy snow. The missing South Koreans are 2 women in their 30s and 50s and 2 men in their 50s who'd been volunteering in Nepal. 5 other South Koreans from the same group of climbers are said to be safe. South Korean President Moon Jae-in is optimistic that the nation's economy is bouncing back, and he says his administration will do its best to maintain that momentum. In a weekly meeting with his top aides, the first of the new year, the president pointed to the latest export figures and said the government will work actively to maintain the positive trend. The president added that his administration will accelerate its drive for innovative deregulation and continue working to cultivate new industries for future growth. He also emphasized deregulation in his weekly meeting with his new Prime Minister, Chung Se-kyun. Chung said he would focus on ways to resolve conflict between the new growth industries and those already established. And with the Lunar New Year holiday to begin Friday, the president also called on his aides to look into transport safety. The founder of Lotte Group, Shin Kyuk-ho, died on Sunday at the age of 97. His life was filled with ups and downs, but there's no doubt that he played a huge role in helping develop the Korean economy after the Korean War, turning Lotte into one of the country's biggest companies. Our Kim Dami is at Shin's public funeral service. Dami.
Devin, I'm here at a memorial altar at the Asan Medical Center in Seoul, where visitors are filtering in to pay their respects for the man some call the CEO of the Korea Strait, the sea passage between South Korea and Japan. As you mentioned, the Lotte founder Shin Kyuk-ho passed away due to a chronic illness on Sunday at the age of 97. The vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Jae-yong, and the former prime minister, Lee Na-kyun, came by this morning to pay their respects. Born during Japan's colonial rule of Korea, Shin established Lotte in Tokyo in 1948 as a small chewing gum manufacturer. 19 years later, he returned to his home country to expand his business. Lotte is now South Korea's 5th largest conglomerate with wide-range operations from cinemas, hotels, and theme parks to oil and chemical factories. With Shin's death, all the founders of Korea's top 5 conglomerates, Samsung, Hyundai, LG, Lotte, and SK, have passed away. The Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry said Shin laid the groundwork for South Korea's food, retail, and tour industries with his pioneering investments and aggressive management. After a funeral ceremony on Wednesday, the business tycoon will be buried in his hometown in Uljugun in Ulsan City.
Now, Dami, like many other powerful family-controlled conglomerates in Korea, Lotte has seen its own share of corruption scandals and family disputes. Tell us about that.
Right. The family scandal dates back to 2015 when a fight for control of the group broke out between Shin Kyuk-ho's 2 sons, Shin Dong-ju and Shin Dong-bin, putting the company at a risky position. After defending a series of his elder brother's attempts to take the helm, Shin Dong-bin officially took over from his ailing father. But the 2 brothers' constant squabbling led to an investigation by South Korean prosecutors, which in turn 2 years later resulted in Shin Kyuk-ho himself being sentenced to 4 years in prison after being convicted of embezzlement and breach of trust. With a 3% stake in Lotte Corporation and other assets, the late Shin's fortune is estimated at well over 1 trillion won. That's around $862 million. Shin reportedly didn't leave a will, But according to Lotte Group, Shin's assets will be handled in accordance with the law. And most importantly, now that Shin Dong-bin, the current Lotte chairman, is firmly in charge, the result will not affect the governance structure of the conglomerate. That's all from me, Devin.
All right, Kim Da-mi, thank you for that report. Now, in other news, Korea's Minister of SMEs and Startups, Park Young-sun, will be attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, starting Tuesday. The annual forum will be attended by some 1,800 global leaders and entrepreneurs over the course of 4 days as they shape global agendas for the coming year. Park was invited as a board member of the Davos Council on Advanced Manufacturing and Production, where she'll discuss measures to help small businesses reach their goals for sustainable development. She's the first South Korean minister to serve on a board at Davos. She'll be explaining South Korea's strategies for implementing smart factories. And among the business leaders she'll be meeting with is Michael Punka, the vice president of Amazon Web Service. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news as we start the week. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-suk, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, so the three main indexes on Wall Street closed Friday at new record highs again. Today here in Korea, the Kospi was also higher. What's the story in the global and domestic markets?
Okay, well, the U.S. market has been hitting new records, and that's partially because there was some good news for the U.S. and Chinese economy, and not really that much of a bad news elsewhere, and the low interest rates. So let me go through that one by one. First, the Chinese growth rate was announced to be 6.1%. That was slightly below the 6.2% market forecast, but well within the range that government set between 6 to 6.5%. But I think what really made the investors happy was China's industrial production, which came out to be 6.9% growth year on year, which well beat the forecast of 5.9%. So even with the trade war, the Chinese economy may not be as bad as a lot of people feared. And then in the U.S., the housing starts surged nearly 17%, and it's the corporate earning it's a corporate earnings season. S&P 500 companies have started to report their earnings, and about 72% of the companies which have reported their earnings so far have beaten analyst expectations. So that is the short-term reasons why the market is being driven upwards, but also the long-term reason is that, well, the United States has lowered its interest rates, and the Fed has announced its intention to keep the rates low for a while. And whenever you have such low interest rates, you have higher stock market. For one thing, there's really not that much other places that the money can go. So the stock market is probably the only place that you can put your money and get a fairly decent return. So that is keeping the stock market up. But there is more and more fear that this high record that the stock market is achieving is perhaps not warranted, that it may be too high compared to the fundamentals. That'll be something we'll have to see throughout this year.
Yes, indeed. And then back here in Korea, we have Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi talking about the Moon administration's new Northern policy. That's, of course, a key initiative calling for closer economic cooperation with countries to the north, like Russia and Mongolia. Do you think we can expect some achievements on that front this year?
Okay, well, I tend to think that this goal was set more for diplomatic reasons than economic reasons, and the reason is that, well, we had the new South policy as a main goal last year, and even this year, the South Asian economies, the ASEAN economies, are expected to do better than the global average. But partially, I think it's because we paid attention to the South last year, so we're going to pay attention to the North this year. And also partially because the government wants to look like it's exploring new territories that we're going to concentrate on the Northern Asian countries this year. The Northern Asian countries here refer to China, Russia, and countries which are landlocked countries which are between China, Russia, and Korea, like Mongolia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Kazakhstan. It's notable that it's the 30th anniversary of relations between Korea and Russia and Korea and Mongolia. So there will be presidential visits throughout this year, or at least they're being planned, much like the president visited the South Asian countries last year. Now, specifically for Russia, Korea has negotiated a 9 bridges plan for cooperation. 9 bridges means that there's 9 areas of infrastructure and economy that Russia and Korea will cooperate in. That's railroad, electricity, shipbuilding, gas, port construction, Arctic Ocean, maritime route, agriculture, fishery, and industrial complexes. And they'll be going ahead with setting concrete plans to realize the goals that they've negotiated earlier. And for other Central Asian countries, especially the landlocked countries, because they're landlocked, infrastructure, especially transportation system, is especially important for those countries. So they represent a good opportunity for Korean construction firms if we can get multiple country cooperation going so that we can set up a transportation infrastructure so these landlocked countries can have access to sea routes in other countries.
Right. Well, Professor Yang, briefly before we go, tell us what we should be looking forward to this week in terms of market economy news.
Okay, well, there's one big statistics coming out this week. That's the fourth quarter GDP figures for Korea. And the big question is going to be whether Korea actually met the 2% growth rate goal, the line in the sand that the government had established. In addition to that, we'll have to see how much of that 2% growth was due to government spending and what was the behavior of business investment and consumption. Those will set the foundations for this year's growth. Hopefully, it'll be higher this year, but if the fourth quarter business investment and consumption were not very solid, then we'll have to be less optimistic for this year.
All right, Professor Yang, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
Now, the cost of dining out here in Korea is rising quite a bit faster than overall inflation. According to the Korea Consumer Agency, in the past year, the prices of popular dishes have risen by between 1% and around 7%. The price of the popular black bean noodles, or jjajangmyeon, which is one of the country's least expensive restaurant meals, rose the most by 7.2%. Food companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola also raised their prices, with the industry attributing the hike to higher costs for labor and ingredients. The capital city of Seoul will run extra subway trains and buses during the Seollal holiday. The Seoul Metropolitan Government announced on Monday that on Saturday and Sunday for the Lunar New Year, subways and buses will run until 2 a.m. There'll also be about 20% more express and intercity buses from Thursday until Monday, as well as an extra 72 late-night buses and 3,000 late-night taxis. You can find real-time traffic information at the website of the Transport Operation and Information Service or through their smartphone app. And with that holiday coming up, one of the country's biggest holidays, the Lunar New Year. These starts at the end of the week. The country's traditional markets are offering some major deals for those planning for family traditions and celebrations. Our Ji-young went to check them out.
Visitors at Gachisan Traditional Market line up to get some free tteokguk, a soup that contains sliced rice cakes and sliced beef to celebrate Seollal.
I like it. It's chilly here, but this hot tteokguk warms me up.
Traditional markets across South Korea are filled with visitors at this time of the year as they go shopping to prepare dozens of dishes for an ancestral rite called charye, during which Koreans pay respect to their late ancestors. As the Seollal holiday runs from Friday until next Monday, 140 traditional markets in Seoul are offering discounts of up to 50% until the start of the holiday in a bid to attract more customers. Gwangjang Market, one of the oldest and largest traditional markets in South Korea, is in the Seollal mood as well. A professional hanbok designer has set up a dressing room at the market's entrance for visitors to try out their favorite hanbok attire.
It's been incredible. I've never really done this thing in my home country. This is the first time I've ever sort of experienced this sort of stuff. And, I'll be looking forward to when I come back.
Customers dressed up in hanbok enjoy taking pictures. Wearing their hanbok, they get a spin of the roulette wheel where special perks and gift certificates are written in the different slots. Traditional markets are not only offering discounts and perks, but are also hosting events including Korean traditional games to get visitors into the holiday spirit. A shopping district near Hanyang University is hosting special events for visitors including Yunori, a Korean traditional board game using 4 sticks. Guests also play the traditional game Taegi, where players kick a tassel up in the air and juggle it with their feet to prevent it hitting the ground. To relieve visitors' parking problems, many traditional markets are also offering free parking until the Seollal holiday ends. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Now, when we think about artificial intelligence, many of us tend to think of the voice assistants on our smartphones, for example. But AI is becoming far more than that. In fact, it's turning our homes into big, intelligent robots. Oh Soo-young has this story.
Imagine walls that detect your mood and play a fitting song, and fridges that tell your oven to heat up your meal without you having to utter a word. Over the next decade, your home is set to grow smarter and smarter, becoming a connected hub of devices powered by artificial intelligence. The smart home market is expected to grow by nearly 18% a year to more than $141 billion by 2023. Tech products close to hitting the market were shown at the Consumer Electronics Show this month, including AI yoga mats and fridges that recognise the food they're storing to draw up personal shopping lists and recipes.
With the constant improvement of deep learning and machine learning, AI is expected to evolve from simply responding to your commands and learning about your preferences to actually anticipating your needs and working actively to improve all aspects of your life.
A research lab at Brown University led by Stephanie Tellix is already looking at this future.
So our goal is to make complex autonomous robots that are capable of high-level behaviors autonomously without a person teleoperating them, and that are helpful, that are useful to people, that can do things for people that they care about to make their lives better.
Robotic arms today can help cook, clean and make drinks, and help those with physical constraints reach and grasp objects in the house. But they can only fulfill tasks they're programmed to do or need to be controlled by a human. So the challenge is getting them to think and move on their own. The lab is training a robotic arm to shut a microwave door on its own based on AI algorithms.
Like if you drop the robot in a new house, all of the objects it encounters are going to be new. So it's going to have some idea of how to interact with them, but not the precise motor commands that will generate exactly the behavior it wants. So this is a way to generate a good initial guess at that behavior and then learn the rest of that behavior in an efficient way.
Telix's lab is also working on ways to improve human-robot interaction, training AI to understand human language, as well as non-verbal cues and gestures. As various robots and smart devices become connected inside the home itself is becoming a robot, accommodating us in new intelligent ways. Ji-young, Arirang News.
The Korean government is taking steps to start taxing profits from cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin as other income, like lottery winnings and prizes, at a rate of 20%. Currently, cryptocurrency profits are taxed as capital gains. According to officials on Monday, the Finance Ministry has asked the department that handles income tax to review such a plan. An official told Yonhap News, however, that while the Finance Ministry has not finalized its plan, the 20% rate is under consideration. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
중마고 is a four-letter phrase that refers to a childhood friend.